Welcome back to Bonanza Disc Golf. I want to do an in the bag for the mountains. As you can see, we got a nice raging stream next to me, which hopefully isn't too loud. And we're going to be taking my Course Conquest series into the mountains where it's 7,000 to 9,000 feet of elevation. Maybe some are a little higher, maybe some are a touch lower, but I need to shoot 1,000 rated on all these courses. And I could take my own bag, but one, it's more fun to create my own little mountain bag and do a little in the bag. And two, discs fly very differently at elevation, at sea level, and then at mountain elevation. Elevation I refer to as just kind of Denver, 5,000 feet above sea level. So I want to walk through how I've chosen to create this bag and some of the fun things that you guys will probably be seeing in those videos. Putter pocket is super full because there are some question marks on some of the discs. But real quick, I want to show you a very crude example that might not be fully scientifically accurate, but conveys the point as to why you need different discs at elevation versus sea level. There's more air molecules and air density the further down you get towards sea level, and so the higher you get, there's less air molecules to affect the disc. What I've noticed is that means that this will glide a little less, so it sucks out the mid-flight because there's less air for the discs to glide on, but there's also less air to get in the way of a disc. So for some people who throw really far, like an Eagle McMahon, he thinks he throws farther up at elevation, and the higher you get, I don't know if there's diminishing returns, but he thinks he throws farther in Denver than he does at sea level. I haven't really found that to be the case. I throw pretty typically mid to high 400s, and I feel like I throw the same sea level to Denver. But before I threw consistently over 400 feet, I definitely felt like I threw further at sea level than I did at elevation. So maybe the glide is more of a factor than the less air molecules, the less far you throw, and then you get to throw farther and farther at elevation. I think it's also why golf balls, they say that they hit it harder at elevation as well as baseballs, so that's a factor. But that being said, it's affecting a lot of my disc choices, and we'll actually start with the putting putters, which is one of the most interesting parts of that, because I have actually chosen to putt with the peaks in the mountains. This is the Latitude 64 disc that came out this year for Isaac Robinson partially, and it is basically a pure that they added a bead to. The reason that I'm putting with the peaks up in the mountains is because they feel very similar to the PA3s, which are my favorite putting putter, but the PA3s are much less glidey than the peaks. Isaac Robinson putted PA3s last year, and this year he's been putting with crowns a lot, which are a Westside disc that feels very similar to the PA3, mostly because he worked all off-season with the crowns before the peaks were in production. So they sent them to him, and he was just hitting the band, he was telling me all the time. That's in our practice round video at Portland Open. And so if putts aren't going to glide as easily, which is one of the biggest differences at mountain courses that I found versus elevation, and it's one of the biggest challenges that I come back to when I come back from playing at sea level to Denver. The putts just don't stay in the air or glide nearly as much or as long as they do down at sea level, and that's even further exacerbated in the mountains. So getting a disc that typically will hit the band is perfect for when I get up here, and that's proven to be true. Putting with it doesn't feel like I'm changing that much, but it's much better for me. Next, in the putters, I decided to go with something pretty glidey, and I actually am missing a slot. I think I do need an Envy or overstable putter. I didn't know if I needed it or not, but I've filmed 2 videos in that Course Conquest series. I'm not a snitch, so I'm not going to tell you how it went, but it was awesome, and the courses are beautiful. First one comes out tomorrow, by the way. But I decided to go with the inner core. Jesse from Trash Pin is one of my friends, and I was at his warehouse yesterday. We filmed a podcast that'll be coming out pretty soon. That'll be I'll talk about it as it comes out. But he gave me a glow inner core, and what I've realized from throwing this for a couple rounds is that it's a very glitch-like disc. So I'm actually maybe going to need to put something in that's a flippier putter just to get some hyzer flip-ups, because I throw it on hyzer expecting it to flip, but it just glides straight on it. I throw it flat to slight turn, and it just glides on it and turns a little bit. So I have an Artifact from Infinite, which is a very glidey, pretty flippy disc. It's not out yet, but it's coming out soon. And I might put this in alongside the inner core, but I don't know if I need both of them. I've gotten some birdies with this, I've thrown some great shots. So right now the inner core is my only putter in the bag for the most part, and I think I'll probably put an Envy or maybe, I did have a PA3 in here today to throw because it's more overstable, a baseline PA3. I didn't really throw it that much in the videos that I filmed so far. So I probably need a more overstable putter, but there's not been a lot of holes that I would have thrown it, because you don't need crazy overstable discs that often. There are still some use cases though. Next are the chicanes, which is my approach disc. I love this in Denver, and then it's a little glidey at sea level actually. So I was throwing MD5s a lot just because it's kind of a mid-range approach disc more than a putter approach disc. That being said, the chicane that I chose is one that actually got very beat in when I went to Arizona. I hit a lot of rocks in the desert with it, and you will hit a lot of rocks in the mountains, which is another good reason to create your own bag so that you're not like just ripping up discs that you normally bag for tournaments and stuff. So I decided to put a beat-in chicane in the bag because it flies just like a normal chicane, down at Denver elevation. So I really like that. The other option is to put in a flippier plastic. So that's why I brought out this forged chicane. I don't have it in the bag in the mountains, but it was in my car. So it's a good example of if you're looking to kind of keep the same disc or a similar disc, you can either do what I did with the Peak and the PA3, or you can just take an old 2 beat up disc, throw it in your bag for the mountains, or a flippier plastic of the same mold. The 3 keys that I kind of look for in looking for discs for the mountains to replace similar slots that I typically bag, but I typically look for a disc that has more glide or is glidier, whether that's just based on the flight numbers or based on what you know. It's flippier because it's much harder to get discs to flip when you're at elevation. They can hold turn decently, but getting them to flip up or just to turn on themselves, it's not very easy. They don't like to swing too far left and right as you get higher up because there's less air to glide on, so they don't really push as far right or left. But I look for glidier, flippier, and lighter. That inner core is only a 168, but you can't really tell that much. And so I actually have, we'll get into it in a second, but a cap rep in the bag, but it's a 170. So it's lighter than my typical max weight cap reps that I throw, just because you don't need all that beef and all that weight when you already are losing a lot of the glide in the mountains. You want to add some of that back in with some lightness. And sometimes a slower disc also works for that because it'll have less hook up fast. And we'll get to that in a second. But the mid-ranges that I have are just 2 right now, but I think this one has to come out, unfortunately. I have the Stig, which is a 6-speed from Castoplast. It's kind of my flippy slot, but it's not too flippy. I could definitely do with a even flippier disc, which feels weird because this is 6.5 -2.1, but something like a Lobster or a Mana or like a Hooligan disc flip, just to get something that if I really like throwing on a deep hyzer to stand up all the way through a gap, it can, because this disc I thought would be that, because it's like that at Denver, and for some reason my silly brain said, hey, it's gonna be the same. It's not. It will flip up and it will hold turn, and it's been a great flyer up here at the mountain courses, but I might need something a little flippier. A touch up in stability from that is this EMAC Truth, which is the new retooled ones, which is definitely nice, but it might be not quite as overstable as I need. I might put in a Guava from Clash Discs instead, but 2 mid-ranges, one that is flip up and one that is straight with a little finish, do work alongside my chicane, which is my approach disc, and then having some faster discs as well. Definitely does the job, I think, but I might change this out for a Guava. Because I do like just putting fun discs in my mountain bag too, because it's fun to be able to come up and play in the mountains. It's beautiful. I want to have a good time. I don't want to like force it to be all serious and whatever. So even if I do play competitions up here, I like keeping them lighthearted and more fun, which is why throwing in an inner core from my buddy Jesse and throwing in the Stig, which is kind of a weirdo disc, and as well as some of the other ones that you'll see in here, it's just a little more fun than not. Fairway drivers, I don't know if I have them figured out at all, but this is what I have. I put in a drift, similarly, because I want it to be fun, because someone gave this to me at the Disc South Expo, and it's just been sitting on my shelf, and I looked at it, and it's 7.6 or 7.5 -2.1 from Streamline, and that's how I'm sure it would fly at other elevations, but here, it's more like my T-Bird slot, and I kept trying to figure it out as if it was going to be like a flip up and slightly over disc, but it definitely is more of a just point and shoot straight with a lot of glide, which is nice because then it flies like a T-Bird would at sea level, kind of, which is pretty sweet. So I have the drift in here. I got to work with it more, and a step up from the drift is actually where the throwing slower discs than I would at lower elevations comes into play, because I have a Roman and a Weapon. The Weapon is an 8-speed from Birdie Disc Golf Supply. The Roman is a 10-speed. And 9 and 10 speeds I feel like are control drivers-ish. 7 and 8 speeds I feel like are true fairway drivers. And this does feel slower and smaller than the Roman. But the reason that I have this in the bag over the Roman is that, one, it's another fun disc, Eric Oakley's Weapon. They fit a very similar slot for me, which is that straight but never really going to turn and then get overstable. And so here they're a little even more overstable than that. But slower is a little better for that slot here, because this disc almost will start to overlap with like a Firebird-ish slot, just because it's a little faster. And the faster disc, the wider wing, means that it's easier to like slow it down and have it hook up and get it overstable, or just move left more. And the Weapon will do that less. So that's why that's in the bag alongside the drift. Of course, I have to have my Sphinx in the bag, but I honestly need to beat up my Sphinx a little more. I keep throwing it thinking it's gonna be that hyzer flip guy, and that's what it is at Denver, and it's not that here. So I maybe even need to put in last year's Sphinx, because it's a little flippier than this, or throw this against a lot more trees in the woods, in the mountains. But I like the Sphinx a lot. It's so pretty. Snag one if you want. Snag my signature jersey as well if you'd like, from Cardinal Disc Golf. And then the last two, I do think you still need some beef when you're in the mountains, because sometimes you just need up and down shot or something super flexy through the woods. So I do have this Captain's Raptor. Like I said, it is a little lighter weight, so it's a little better for being up in the mountains, I think. And I put in this Broadbird, which is a Firebird. There's some discs that I buy just to support people or some people give me, and this is a great opportunity for me to throw them in the bag just because it's for more fun than anything. I just love playing in the mountains and getting to make new bags and try out new discs. And so the Broadbird is a pretty straight run of Firebirds that he did, but I've thrown some good shots today, got some birdies, and it's flat top one, pretty straight, money. Drivers are intriguing. One of the fun discs that I put in is the Treason from Dynamic Discs. It's a 10-speed, and it's crazy flippy. Even here, it's very flippy, which is pretty fun. I don't throw it that much, but if I ever need like a crazy hyzer slip to turn guy, or like a bit, I don't even know what I use it for, but it's cool and I like it, and I don't throw rollers up here, but it's my roller disc, so I threw it in the bag because why not? And then are the ones that I generally do use. I don't have anything crazy overstable in the driver category. Maybe it'd be worth it to have that, but the most overstable I have is the Saki Bob in general. Because it's in the mountains, I just wanted to put the weirdest overstable driver that I own in there, or one of the most interesting, and this one being a pretty expensive, kind of controversial disc. I was like, let's throw it in there. It feels good. It's in the Supreme plastic, so it's in here. I haven't thrown it. I did have a different disc in there that you'll see in tomorrow's video. That's not there anymore. Watch tomorrow's video to see why. The next two going down in stability are the Interval and the Wraith. They occupy very similar spots, except for this Star Wraith is much more flip up, even here in the mountains, and this is very much just straight. I can flex it and throw good shots with it. I can throw it on hyzer and keep it on hyzer, but it doesn't push too far left, which is where the General comes in. And the Wraith, I can throw it and it'll pop up on hyzer, and if I throw it flat, it'll actually drift a bit. It is an 11-speed, so a touch slower than the Interval, but both are pretty money. I've been needing to throw a Wraith in the bag anyways for a long time, so I might as well put it in the mountain bag. And then lastly is the Texas Swing Halo G-Blend 168 Faro. Kind of hits all the spots. Flippier plastic, flippier disc than I bag, lightweight, gummy, feels good, crazy, flip ups, big flat to turn shots. In the mountains, one of the things that you deal with a lot is elevation change, like throwing up and down hills. And so when you're throwing up a hill, you need something even flippier than you think. Like one hill had almost 100 feet of elevation gain in tomorrow's video. So that's insane. So you need something crazy flippy. And then it doesn't look very flippy. And then you're confused because you're like, that should go far. And then you're like 200 feet away from where you thought you'd be. But one other big important thing is the bag. It's not that important, but shout out European Birdies. If you use code Bodanza on their site, you get free shipping to the US as well as 10% off. But the biggest thing I actually took out of here because I needed to bring it to the front is a water bottle. When you're playing in the mountains, especially when it's summertime and it's hot, you are going up and down. I'm very sore from playing, and I haven't been sore playing disc golf in a long time. But it's mostly just the hiking. But going up and down so much, you need to drink a lot of water. There's less air up here, so you could have altitude sickness if you're not super used to it. I've never had to deal with that, luckily, but you gotta make sure to drink a lot of water because you get a little loopy. And that's honestly a part of what makes these mountain challenges even more fun. I got chalk bags and towels and stuff and all that goodness, but if you're wanting to come to Denver or the area, I definitely recommend playing a mountain course. Even if you do have to take your normal bag, just expect that things are gonna fly a little bit more like bricks than you thought. And go to your flippier discs. I've not thrown the overstable ones very much at all here, unless I'm trying to throw this big flex shot over stuff, which has not panned out well, so maybe I should just never do that. That being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Shout out Finish Line, one of my sponsors, Imminent Discs, the main sponsor, Cardinal jerseys, and everything else linked in the description. We're in the June Subscribe-a-thon, so please subscribe. 50,000 subscribers, and we got a sweet giveaway coming your way. Sit 55, we'll double it at 60. I'll go ahead and let you guys choose my whole normal tournament bag for the rest of the year, except for my putting putters, because I do like the PA3s, and I've surprisingly been loving the Peak up here in the mountains. So, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. This bucket is not comfortable, but it's the only thing that approximated a seat in my car. Ugh. This is very dangerous that I'm packing this bag like this right here next to the water. All right, bye for real.